So today I want to talk about Next.js server actions and also how you can potentially do a filter using server actions and also the React server components and how that plays into the mix. So what I have is an application. It's called the Build Tavern, and the idea is you can have developers here and they list what their main role is. So like this hunter is a backend developer, this one's a designer, and then you can filter on this page, like I only want to see front-end developers only, then you can apply the filter, and then in theory these two would, or these three would go away, and then this one would stay. Right now the filters don't do anything because I don't have it hooked up, but I want to show you what the code looks like on what we have so far. So this is the page. I am using the Next.js App router, and this is the tavern, and here's the page. So I am fetching the data on the server. Initially I'm fetching all the data from a Supabase database, and I'm selecting all the columns, and then I'm saying I'm kind of filtering a few things out, like if main role is empty, then don't show that profile. If they don't have like a full name, then don't show that profile. And then I am doing the await on the query, and then when the data comes back, I pass it into a component called pair profile list. And then here's profile list. You get the profiles, and then down here you map over the profiles, just a simple map over the profiles, and then you display the avatar if they have one, full name, etc. So it's pretty standard page. So you fetch the data on the server side, then you pass it, and then these will note that these are both server components, so all this stuff is server code. And then, so what happens if we want to do a filter? Well, traditionally, you would kind of store this data in state using like a useState or something, and then you would check these boxes, and then you would do it and apply the filters, and then you would send these filters off to a API backend from the client side, and then the client would return that data, and then you would update that state, and then you would show the new filtered list of profiles. That's how I used to do it a lot. But now we have these server actions, and what server actions are is if you can look at some of my previous videos on server actions. But what you can do now is you can have a form. So this form is wrapping around my filters. So these are my checkbox filters here. And this form has an action, and this action is hooked up to a server action. And this server action lives in actions.ts. And then this is what it currently does. It kind of just console.logs out the checkboxes. So I do a form data get all on the checkboxes, and then these are going to be all the checkboxes that are checked. So we can take a look at that right here. This is my console. I applied these filters, so the front end and then the full stack ones are checked. If I check all of them like that, and then if I hit the apply filters, you'll see that all these are checked. So what we can do here to kind of tie together the server actions and the React server component is, I think you gotta think a little differently. Instead of like having the client fetch the code, they want to have the server fetch the code as much as possible. Well, how do we do that? We use search query parameters. So what we would like is if we can have like a main role up here, and this would equal these checkboxes, right? So for example, like backend, designer, developer, and then when you kind of go, you'll want to redirect to this page with these search parameters in the URL. right now it doesn't do anything, but like imagine if instead of hitting the backend with the client and then storing in the state, imagine just reusing the page code and having this page always check to see if there are query search parameters, and then use that to filter on our data. So that is what we're going to do today. All right, so let's start by adding these to the URL, right? So we have an array, well, kind of an array of the checkboxes, right? So what can we do with that? Well, we can do something like this. So if the main role filters that length is greater than 0, first, like if there are checkboxes, then do something. If there aren't checkboxes, we're gonna want to like redirect back to just the normal profiles page or the normal tavern page. We want redirect to come from next navigation. All right, so we can move that up here. So now if we have something like this, we want to do a const params, and this can be a new URL search params, and this takes in an array, and then we can do something like main roles or main role, and this would be main role.filters, and we can do a join on the join on this array with a comma, right? So let's see what this gives us. So if we do that, and if we do a console.log on these params, let's take a look at what these params are. If we kind of do a new search params, and then we do a join. All right, so let's check like a bunch of these and hit apply. So you can see that your search params, okay, it's gonna give us that. So what we can do now is we can do a redirect. So it's a lot more routing focused. So if you ever work like Remix, this is kind of like the Remix mindset as well. Everything is like a search param, everything based around forms. That's kind of how this is kind of shifting out to be as well. So then we want to do a question mark here, and we can do params. So we're going to do a redirect back to the tavern page with these checkboxes as the URL parameters, right? And then the main role is going to be equal to those checkboxes joined together with a comma, so like a comma separated list. So let's see if this works. We're going to give that a save. I'm going to do a reload just for funsies. So if I do backend, front end, full stack, so it should redirect me to here. All right, so now we have the main role up here as a search parameter, and it will do like encoding of the comma. So this %2 is just a special encoding. You kind of want to use this so to make sure that the URL is properly encoded. That's why I use this URL search params function here. What we can do on the page is we can have access to these URL search params. Well, how do we get access to those search parameters from our page, right? It's actually here. So if we do props, we do a log of these props. I'm going to do a quick save. So this is going to show up on our server side. Okay. So right now we're on this page. As you can see, the props, there's a params and then the search params, and the search params is going to automatically get that main role, and it's going to say, okay, it's like the comma separated list, which is exactly what we want. So we have it under props.search params, and we can kind of just do one of these search params. I'm going to make TypeScript happy here by doing one of these. So let's do a console log of these search params. Okay, so we have these checked over here, and you can see search params. So search params.main role is going to have a string that gives us the checked boxes. So if I check all the boxes, the search params.main role is going to give us all those, right? So what I'm going to do next is specific to Supabase. I'm going to check to see if there are search params.main role. If there is, we're going to add additional filters to this query. And I'll just copy and paste that over here. Alright, so we'll specify just the main roles, empty array. I'm going to do a if there are search params.main role, then I'm going to split that back into an array because I want to map over it, and I want to add this extra piece of code here. This is specific to Supabase, and I want to join it back together again with a comma. So and then I'm going to tack it back onto this query. So it's gonna be if the main role is one of the values or another one of the values, is what the whole point of this part is. And then you can make that query at the end. So now this should be working. If I have all of these checked, then it's going to show everybody. So I just want to do front-end developer, apply the filter. So it's going to go, alright, it's going to add that query string, that search parameter to the URL. That's going to hit this page. It's going to redirect to this page, and this page is going to read the query parameters up here, and it's going to filter on the Supabase query. So that's exactly what we wanted to do. The second benefit of that is you can kind of open up a new incognito window, and this is going to just work out of the box, right? If you just go to here, this page is going to work out of the box with the query parameters up here, and that's a benefit. But as you can see here, this checkbox is not checked. These checkboxes need to know that these query parameters are up in the URL. So how can we do that part? Well, we can do something like a main roles and pass that into here. So we're going to pass that into our profile list, and then our profile list will then be aware of those main roles. Alright, so we'll do main roles, and then main roles can be an array of string. Okay, so now if we go in here, okay, so the search parameters have designer and front end. The main roles is an array of designer and front end. So the search parameters, as they come in, it's just gonna detect a string. But the main roles in here is going to be an array of those strings. Okay. So then, how do we tell these checkboxes to be checked initially if we detect these URL parameters? Well, we'll go to these checkboxes, which live here, and then we can kind of do something like this, where it is checked by default. So default, I believe it's called default checked. Yeah, it is checked by default. So we go if main roles includes this option.value, because each of these checkboxes has a value. So this one is backend, this one is designer, this one is front end. So these values are going to match this string like exactly. So this front end one is going to be the value of this checkbox, and if they match, if this value is in this array, then it's going to be checked by default. So we're going to do a save on that. So let's do 3 of these filters here. Alright, so it's going to be designer, front end, and full stack, and we only get 2 results, right? So let's do a new incognito window. Okay, here we go. So we have just those 2 results, and these checkboxes know that these are in the URL. That's exactly what we want. So yeah, that's all I wanted to show today. It's a little different approach than what you might be used to when using filters. You can certainly still add all this data to a state and then do it the old client way, but I have a feeling that with these new React server components and server actions, this is kind of the way they want you to do it. More server fetching the code, more server fetching code with filters, and more URL parameters in the mix, and that kind of just works pretty well together. If I want to do back end, front end, apply the filters, it should work. It should redirect me, and it's going to update it as well, update the list. Yep, that's all I want to show. Thanks.